The war between humans and the Varelian Empire had continued for many years, and both sides were tired. But neither was willing to be the first to step back. The Varelians were a proud alien race with shimmering skin and tall, elegant bodies. Their queen, Zarai, was known across the galaxy for her strong voice and unshakable decisions. She never trusted humans. She believed they created trouble wherever they went and only acted kind when they needed something. Because of that belief, every time humans sent a message asking for peace, she refused without a second thought. Human commanders, however, still tried to find a peaceful way out. Too many people had suffered. Too many battles had ended with no true winner. Peace was the only real answer. They thought maybe this time the Queen would give them a chance. But the moment their message reached her throne room, she rejected it just like before. On a destroyed border planet where both sides had fought recently, smoke still rose from broken buildings. Human rescue teams moved carefully through the ruins, searching for survivors. Among these teams was a young soldier named Elias. He was not the strongest or most experienced, but he had a calm personality and a habit of helping anyone he found, even small animals. His commanders often told him that his kindness would get him in trouble one day, but Elias never changed. His team was searching the ruins of an old research station when he heard something unusual. It was a soft sound, almost like the cry of a small child. Elias stopped walking and listened again. The wind was strong, but the sound came again, a weak and frightened voice. He slowly stepped away from his team and followed the sound into a half-collapsed hallway. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the metal floors creaked under his boots, but he kept moving forward. At the end of the hallway, behind a broken door, he found a small figure curled up beside a pile of debris. It was a child, but not a human child. Her skin glowed faintly with soft blue patterns, and her long hair was tied with crystal strips. She must have been very young. Her hands were shaking, and her eyes were wide with fear. Elias understood immediately that she was a Varelian child. He froze for a moment, not because he feared her, but because he knew how complicated this situation could be. A human soldier finding an alien child in the middle of a war zone might lead to misunderstandings on both sides. Still, he could not walk away. The wind outside was cold, and the building was damaged enough to collapse at any moment. The child needed someone right now, and he was the only one here. He slowly knelt down so he would not look threatening, and spoke gently. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The child looked at him with frightened eyes but did not run. Her breathing was fast, and she kept her arms around herself as if protecting her body from the dust and falling debris. Elias moved even slower, lifting a small piece of rubble that was leaning dangerously above her. When he set it aside, the child flinched but did not run away. Instead, she watched him carefully, trying to understand why a human was helping her. "What's your name?" Elias asked softly. The child hesitated. Her voice was weak when she finally whispered, "Lyra." Elias smiled gently. "Lyra is a beautiful name. You're safe now. I'll help you get out of here." He reached out his hand but did not touch her. He waited. After a long moment, Lyra slowly placed her small, glowing hand into his. Her skin was warm, softer than he imagined. She trusted him enough to take that step, even though everything around them told her she should fear humans. Elias carried her in his arms as he walked back to the rescue team. His teammates were shocked when they saw him holding a Varelian child. Some of them stepped forward quickly, unsure how to react. A few whispered among themselves, unsure if this was safe or even allowed. But Elias kept his voice calm and explained that she was alone and needed help. Before they could discuss what to do next, Varelian scouts spotted Elias from a distance. They saw him holding the child, and their first thought was that he had taken her. They immediately sent a message back to their queen, warning her that humans had found the young princess. They did not know if the child was hurt. They did not know if the human soldier was good or bad. They only saw a human carrying the queen's daughter. When Queen Sarai received this report, her entire body went cold. Her daughter Lyra had been missing since the battle ended. She had sent search teams everywhere, but no one found her. Hearing that humans had found Lyra made her heart twist in fear and anger. She imagined the worst because her entire life she had believed that humans were unpredictable. She told her commanders to prepare for confrontation. If humans were using her child as a tool, she would never forgive them. On the human side, commanders saw Varelian forces gathering on the border of the ruined planet. They knew something serious was happening, but they did not know what. Elias was ordered to take Lyra to the open field between both armies. No one wanted the situation to turn into a fight, but they also did not want the Varelians to think humans were hiding the child. Elias walked into the open area with Lyra still holding on to him. Her arms were wrapped around his neck and her face was buried gently against his shoulder. Even though she was scared, she seemed to feel safe with him. Human soldiers watched silently. They knew this moment might decide the future of the entire conflict. On the other side of the field, the Varelian queen arrived with her elite guards. She stepped forward, her tall figure shining under the faint sunlight. Her eyes were sharp and full of fear mixed with anger. She saw her child in the arms of a human soldier, and for a moment, she could not even breathe. Lyra looked unharmed, but that did not calm the queen's heart. She prepared herself for the worst. Elias stopped walking when he saw the queen. He behaved respectfully, not making any sudden movement. He gently lowered Lyra onto her feet. The moment the child stood on the ground, she hesitated. She looked at her mother, then at Elias, unsure what to do. Then something happened that no one on either side expected. Lyra did not run to her mother right away. Instead, she turned back toward Elias and wrapped her arms around him tightly. It was a full, warm hug, the kind a child gives to someone she truly trusts. She held on to him as if she feared losing him. The entire field went silent. Human soldiers stared with surprise. Varelian guards gasped. Even the queen felt her entire world tilt. Her daughter trusted a human. Not only trusted him, but hugged him with pure affection. The queen's anger disappeared for a moment, replaced by shock. She had always believed humans were dangerous, but her daughter clearly felt differently. Lyra slowly looked at her mother, then back at Elias, trying to show something through her actions. It was as if the small child was saying that this human had helped her, not harmed her. Queen Sarai stepped forward. Her voice trembled slightly when she spoke. "Did you protect her?" Elias nodded. "Yes." "Why?" the queen asked. There was no hostility in her tone now, only confusion. "Because she needed help," Elias replied simply. His voice was calm. His words were honest. He did not try to make himself look heroic. He only told the truth. The queen had heard many speeches from human leaders, many promises, many offers, but she had never heard something so simple and real. Elias had no reason to help Lyra during a war, yet he did. And her daughter trusted him enough to show affection in front of two armies. The queen looked at her daughter again. Lyra slowly left Elias's side and walked to her mother. But she kept looking back at the human soldier as she moved closer to the queen. When she finally reached her mother, she touched her hand gently. It was a signal of safety, a signal of truth. For the first time in many years, the queen felt her beliefs shake. Everything she thought about humans did not match what she saw in front of her. This single moment began to open a space in her heart that she had closed long ago, a space where peace might be possible. She stood there quietly, watching her daughter and the young soldier. The wind blew through the silent field, and for the first time, both armies waited without raising their weapons. Neither side knew what would happen next, but everyone knew that something had changed. The queen looked at Elias again. She did not speak, but her expression was no longer filled with anger. It was filled with questions, doubt, and something new, something fragile but important. A small beginning that had the power to change the fate of two species. And all of it started with a child's hug. The field between the two armies stayed silent long after Lyra hugged Elias. No one dared to move, no one dared to speak. Something important was happening, something that felt bigger than any battle they had fought before. Queen Zarai looked at her daughter carefully, trying to understand everything she had just seen. Lyra stood beside her mother now, holding her hand gently, but her eyes kept returning to the human soldier who had carried her out of danger. She looked at him with the same trust she showed when he saved her life. Queen Zarai slowly bent down to check her daughter. She touched Lyra's arms, her face, her back, searching for any sign of injury. When she confirmed the child was unharmed, she let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. It was a quiet breath, filled with relief and confusion. She lifted her gaze again and studied Elias. He stood still, calm, respectful, his hands lowered to show he meant no harm. His eyes were steady. There was no fear in them, no pride, no demand, only honesty. The queen's commanders waited behind her. They were ready to follow whatever order she gave, but they too had seen Lyra hug the human. They could not pretend it meant nothing. Even the guards, trained to be strong and cold, felt the weight of that moment. On the human side, soldiers watched with tense shoulders and held breath. No one wanted this delicate moment to break. Queen Zarai finally spoke again. Her voice was softer than before, but it still held the authority of a ruler. "Come forward." Elias hesitated for a moment, unsure if he had heard her correctly. But when she repeated the order, he slowly stepped closer. He moved carefully, not because he feared her, but because he respected the situation. Varelian guards watched him closely, but none of them raised their weapons. Even they could sense something different in the air. When Elias reached a respectful distance, the queen studied him again. She searched his face, trying to understand him. Human faces were harder for her to read, but this soldier looked more like a protector than a threat. She could not deny that. "You carried my child," she said slowly. "You protected her when you had no reason to. My people reported that you found her in the ruined building. Tell me exactly what happened." Elias explained everything from the moment he heard Lyra's cry to the moment he brought her out of the collapsing hallway. He described how she had been scared and alone, how the building was unstable, and how he simply did what any decent person would do. He did not try to make himself look like a hero. He did not exaggerate. He just told the truth in his quiet, steady voice. Lyra listened to the story with wide eyes. When Elias mentioned how she placed her hand in his, she smiled softly, remembering that moment of trust. Queen Zarai saw the smile and felt her heart shift again. It had been a long time since she had seen her daughter smile like that. When Elias finished speaking, the queen remained quiet. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she asked the question that her people were too afraid to ask. "Why would a human risk himself for someone from a race he is at war with?" Elias did not take long to answer. He simply said, "Because she is a child, and she needed help." His answer was so simple that it cut through the heavy silence like light cutting through darkness. The queen blinked. Not because she did not understand him, but because she had never expected such a pure reason from someone she had grown up believing was dangerous. She looked down at Lyra, and the child squeezed her hand. It was a small sign, but it gave the queen strength. She turned back to Elias. "I do not trust humans easily," she said. "But today, you showed something I cannot ignore. Her words made both armies shift, unsure what she was going to say next. The queen continued. Humans sent peace offers many times. I refused every one of them because I believed that accepting peace would make my people weak. I believed humans would take advantage of kindness. Elias listened silently. But now, she said, I see that maybe I was wrong. Her commanders looked shocked. Human soldiers felt hope rise inside them, though none dared move. Queen Zarai took a deep breath and stood taller. I want to speak with your leaders. If peace is possible, then today is the day we will find out. Human commanders quickly stepped forward, surprised but relieved. They had dreamed of hearing these words for years. The queen motioned for her advisors and guards to join her, and the two sides formed a circle in the open field. No weapons, no shields, no anger. Just talks. Elias stepped back and stood with the human soldiers, but Lyra looked at him again, her eyes soft. She tugged on her mother's robe, quietly asking something. The queen bent down as Lyra whispered. When the queen stood again, she looked at Elias and said, My daughter wants you to stay near. She feels safe with you. Elias nodded respectfully. I can stay. The peace discussions began in a way no one expected. There were no shouting voices, no threats, no pressure. Instead, both sides spoke honestly. The queen admitted that she had been afraid humans would never understand the Varelian way of life. Human commanders admitted they feared the Varelians would never see humans as anything more than invaders. They talked about misunderstandings, fears, and losses. They talked about what both sides wanted, a future without war. While the adults talked, Lyra slowly walked over to Elias. She stood beside him and watched the discussions quietly. He smiled gently at her, and she leaned slightly against his arm. For a child who had been terrified just hours ago, she now looked calm and safe. It showed everyone watching how powerful a single act of kindness could be. As the talks continued, the sun slowly lowered in the sky. What started as a tense, dangerous meeting had become something softer. The queen's voice lost its sharp edge, and human leaders dropped the defensive tone they usually used. They were all tired of fighting, and this unexpected moment had opened a door they thought would stay closed forever. At one point, the queen looked up at Elias and asked, When you found her? Did she cry? Elias nodded. She was scared, but she was very brave. Lyra smiled proudly at his words, and the queen felt a gentle warmth in her chest. She had feared humans would never understand her people, yet here stood a human who understood her daughter better than many Varelians did. The talks lasted until the sky turned a deep shade of blue. In the end, the queen closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about everything she had heard and seen. Then she stood up, took Lyra's hand, and walked to the center of the circle. She looked at both sides with a steady expression. I cannot promise a perfect future, she said slowly, but I can promise that we will try. I will no longer refuse peace. I will build a bridge instead of a wall. Her words made the entire field go silent again, but this time, the silence was filled with hope. Human commanders bowed their heads with respect. Varelian advisors touched their chests in the traditional greeting of agreement. The queen then turned to Elias. You saved my child. For that, I owe you something greater than a simple thank you. You helped me see what I refused to see. You helped me take the first step toward peace. Elias shook his head softly. You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone should do. The queen gave him a gentle, rare smile. Not everyone would do it, but you did. Lyra walked forward and held Elias's hand again. Will you visit our home? She asked shyly. I want to show you the sky garden. Elias smiled warmly. If your mother allows it, I would like that. Queen Zarai nodded. One day when things are calm, you will be welcome. Both armies slowly lowered their weapons and began stepping back. The air felt lighter, almost peaceful. Soldiers whispered among themselves, amazed by the sudden change. No one would have believed that a lost child and a single act of kindness could end years of conflict. Yet here they stood, witnessing that exact change. Before leaving, Queen Zerai approached Elias once more. She placed her hand over her heart, the Varelian sign of deep respect. "Today, you showed my people that humans can protect, not only fight. You have changed more than you realize." Elias bowed his head in return. "I'm glad your daughter is safe." The queen turned and walked toward her ship with Lyra. But just before boarding, the child broke away and ran back to Elias one last time. She hugged him tightly around the waist, her small arms glowing with gentle blue light. Elias knelt down and hugged her back carefully. When she finally let go, she smiled at him with bright eyes. "I'll see you again," she said. "I'll see you too," Elias replied. Lyra returned to her mother, and together they boarded the ship. Human soldiers watched the Varelian vessel rise into the sky, but for the first time, they did not watch with fear. They watched with hope. Elias stood quietly, thinking about everything that had happened. He knew this day would be remembered for generations. A war had not ended because of strength or weapons, but because a child trusted someone she was told to fear. A simple hug had changed the galaxy. And as both armies began to leave the field, no one looked at the other as an enemy anymore. They looked at each other as possible friends. The future was uncertain, but it was brighter than ever. And it all began with the moment the alien queen saw her child hugging a human soldier.